Yo, what's up, Court?
Hey, guys. What's good?
Yo, so we got our boy Court Bob from MLW, friend of the show, actually the guy that got me into the podcasting game back in the day. Disco used to be on our show quite frequently. And when Court comes on here, it's usually for one reason, to give big news or to put himself over. If you can do both at the same time, all the better. And if you can bury Disco while you're, giving us your big news, that's even the best scenario.
And you got to always plug some shit for sure. So, no, it's good to talk to you guys and catch up.
Right. What do you got, Court? Boom.
Man, it's just been a busy week with MLW announcing we're coming to Vice this spring. Actually, May 1st, we roll out with the first batch of episodes of Fusion. It's busy days, busy times, but, you had that window where we announced on Monday, and it was really fun, really exciting, and the energy was great. I was blown away by the support from everyone online because whenever you do something, there's going to be someone out there that's just going to be sharpshooting it, right, on social media. But it was just such an overwhelming flow of just positivity. It blew me away. And then, Tuesday morning, I kind of had that, adrenaline hangover. And I'm like, oh, shit, got to get back to it because we've got more Zoom calls, more meetings, more things going on because, we're still in the hunt for some other stuff, some of the stuff you're privy to. But it's exciting. And it's a good time to be doing what I'm doing. The only free agent in the game right now with the ability to do these kind of deals. WWE rolled up their deals in January, and other companies have their deals locked in. But, it's good to be the pretty girl at the dance everyone wants to talk to and dance with.
Yeah. And
that's the big news because you put yourself over a lot there. So you got that part down, but the big news is that you're going. He didn't he, Konnan?
Hey man, I have to check all those boxes off. Right. Hey, I don't know how long you're going to keep me on before you hang up on me. I got to get my shit.
You got your shit in there for sure. So you're on Vice now. What time is there a tie-in with Dark Side of the Ring? Are you going to be on the lead-in or anything like that?
I was going to ask that.
Right. So there's a few phases to this. The first phase is we're going to roll out kind of our footage before the pandemic and get a larger audience familiar and acclimated to what MLW is, what we're about, what makes us different from everyone else out there, and our stories and our feuds and our rivalries and who our guys are, what makes Tattoo so special, what makes Hammerstone Hammer, and what is the dynasty and all these different things and the fusion of styles that we showcase and all those storylines, all that shit is really important. And we want to get that out there to establish a baseline of awareness for MLW. And then phase 2 will kick in when we return with crowds for the next season of MLW. And I really wanted to avoid just kicking things off with an empty arena vibe. And I'm like, let's just hold on that. And I think it's a smarter move to just start with a kind of just getting to know you phase, and then fans can watch MLW in blocks on Vice.
Don't you get that empty arena vibe sometimes when you book Konnan? That you're worried that it might be an empty arena?
Man.
Oh, man. We need a kazoo for this one.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So when is it starting?
So May 1st, they're going to roll out the first batch of episodes, and they'll do it they're going to be a block of Dark Side and Dark Side Confidential. So you'll get this really nice, time to binge on MLW and Dark Side stuff. And then we're still working on what go for new content, when it will air, what night, what the time slot, all that stuff is TBD. We're still
okay.
Talking
That's phase 2. I got a great question for you here. Okay, it's good for your marketing. Yeah. All right. So, say nobody's ever seen MLW ever before. Now, of course, you're not going to minimize any talent that you have, right? But you know who your A talent is and who your B talent is, right? Who are some of the guys, when you're rolling out footage, who are guys that, you're telling the audience, hey, you really need to see these guys? These are my top guys, and these are the guys that are the guys I want to, that you need to know. And, of course, all of our who is our showcase talent?
Yeah, so what I've kind of designed MLW in a way where instead of having the guy, which I think is an important thing, but also can be kind of a loaded gun scenario for a promoter. I mean, Vince has had that guy; he has more control over the guy now. But when he had the guy in the 80s and 90s, that was Hogan. And then he went to WCW, and then the guy was Shawn. He lost his smile. He had to leave. So it's all these. You got to be careful with that. And I liked how Heyman had the SmackDown 6, and we have the Fusion 5s. And you kind of assemble these guys, and you might find that guy breaks out in that mix, but they're all strong enough to sell out houses and build your company around. So And if one goes down to injury, you have, 4 more to work off of. So for us, it kind of is, there's always that rotation, right? So it depends on a bunch of variables. But the Von Erichs are a big part of the company, and as is Fatu and Contra, as is Alex Hammerstone, as is kind of like this unique thing happening with Azteca Underground and Promociones Dorado, which started with Selena. And then over the last year, we've been telling the story with her, where she disappeared, and then she came back, and there was a real question mark and mystery about where she was, what was going on. And Konnan dropped some clues that she was doing some things and owed some people, some dangerous people, some money. And there's this whole big story that's been playing out since last June, and we're going to be paying that off in the weeks to come. So we try to book out things in a long-term way, and when you have a core group that you can build around, it gives you that opportunity.
I'm going to work with you guys here and help sell your story. I'm going to say that when Konnan got Selena De La Renta's phone and he has the provocative pictures, he sent me those provocative pictures. I was very impressed.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, well, we'll just say that.
Well, we've now had an authentic, creepy moment on a podcast.
I'm trying to sell your story, guys.
100%.
Yeah. Let me ask you something real quick. That Court, when I was because when you did the first MLW, the first incarnation, what years was that? Like the mid '90s or early 2000s?
No, 2002 to 2004.
2002, 2004. Okay. I really didn't, it was on the Sunshine Network or whatever it was on, so I never saw it. And so now I saw it because during the pandemic, you were playing like old, matches and shit, right?
Right.
You seem to have seemed to back then really been heavily influenced by Paul Lee and Japan, correct?
Big time. I mean, Paul Lee to me was, having come from Westchester, New York, and seeing Paul Lee just blow up the wrestling world in the 90s and doing it like a few miles down the road from me here in Westchester, it was really inspiring. This guy was doing this very much a bootstrap grassroots thing, and it was just a force to reckon with, and he's a genius. And it really inspired me. And so when you saw that, I'm like, man, that I love that. I wanted to work for Paul Lee, and it's a true story. The last ECW, timing is everything, right? I'm backstage in the last ECW pay-per-view looking for a job, loitering as one does when they're backstage and don't have the job.
Trying to pretend you're not looking for a job, but you are. Go ahead.
Oh, there was no shame. Hey, Tommy, can I talk to you for a minute? And Tommy Dream was running around trying to put out fire. Paul Lee's behind the closed doors. He's got a shitstorm going on there. I was like, well, I guess I'll just sit back here. And he knew things were kind of funky when Balls Mahoney gets so hot. He punches a wall, fucks up his hand, and he's pissed because he couldn't get off the pay-per-view to go to a Giants game. What the fuck? And so, it was a weird time.
Now, let me ask you a question. Because when you were writing for SmackDown, was Paul Lee writing at the same time, or did you and him ever get to work together? No.
Yeah, so he came back after what I guess as Dusty would have called it, a sabbatical. He had taken a sabbatical from the creative team and came back in 2005 to do the WWE ECW thing. And it started with a very top secret, confidential, very small circle of people working on the one night stand concept. And then that turned into the following year, one night stand being a slingshot device to launch the offshoot third brand, which was ECW on Sci-Fi.
Bro,
so I got to kind of see that whole thing.
That one night stand crowd, that very first night, was very fucking rowdy.
That was to me in 2005. I think it was like June 7th, 2005. That was one of the best, greatest crowds from that era, from the 90s era, that came back for one night to experience it again. And you got to see a lot of faces you hadn't seen go to a wrestling show in a while. Came back to the Hammerstein to see that show live, and it was a really good night. A lot of it really worked. There was one match I know that the guys had higher hopes, and I know Eddie really was frustrated with his match. He worked, I believe, Benoit.
Yeah.
Wow. They were only given like 10 minutes, and they just it's like you have two of the top guys at that moment in the game, and it just didn't click that night for whatever reason. There's those,
and they want to go, they want to show out, and they want to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, look, even a home run king or a slugging king will strike out here and there.
Yeah, but the funny thing about it is we talked about this the other day on the show. Bro, Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid did 5 stars in 10 minutes. But with those two guys, it absolutely can happen.
Sure.
It's just funny how these guys.
It's weird. It's like, so you don't need a 30-minute thing there, and I don't think it was necessarily a time restraint that just screwed the pooch on a match. It's just sometimes you just don't have that flow with someone in the ring, and it is what it is. And I know that Eddie in particular, I haven't been around that moment. He was so locked in on making that match as a killer match because he wanted to steal the show, and it just the guy. There's been matches like that throughout history. Yeah. Malenko and him had just a breakout clinic out there, and I loved the Malenko Guerrero Classic. That to me was so great because you had all this wild, hardcore stuff, and then you could contrast it with the technical finesse of Malenko and Guerrero, and it was a revelation at the time. They both got signed off of that series by Bischoff, and I don't know if that series hadn't happened, they would have gotten signed. They should have, but I don't think they would have.
Now when you're writing, what influences your direction or your vision? Is it a little bit of everything, movies, or is there certain styles that, because I know you were also very heavily influenced by Gary Hart.
It depends on where we are. I try to book out, 18, 24 months, and of course a lot of things will change, but you want to have kind of the roadmap. The thing that you can't, I book for heat. And I love it, and that's what Gary taught me. And guys like Dream always booked for heat and stuff, and Vince books a little differently. It's a monster machine, and everyone has their own way. My thing is how I booked up until the pandemic was radically different from how I booked during a pandemic because you're not drawing houses, you're kind of in sustain mode, not in growth mode. You're not, building. You can't really build the same. You're not selling tickets. You don't have crowds react off. So if your system's designed around booking heat, you have to do things a little differently, and you have to get a little weird. And you also want to prevent or sustain feuds. So you don't want to do your big money matches doing big, crazy, big money stuff with no fans. It didn't make sense. So you have to find a path to keep the product entertaining, but do it differently. And there's no real, guidebook for that. There's no book. How do you book in an empty arena, cycle 6 to 8 months to a year? When we went in, we did an empty arena match with MJF actually right before the pandemic hit. It aired after the pandemic hit. So when you went into that idea, the idea was, let's do an empty arena match. It's fun. You think it's Funk and Lawler, of course. And by the time it aired, everyone was doing empty arena well, shit, that wasn't really interesting at all. Not because of what they did. It's just the interesting concept of an empty arena didn't mean shit.
Right. And let me ask you one last question before we get out of here. How long, hopefully nothing happens to him, but how long before we're on a dark side of the ring talking about Teddy? Nothing?
Ooh, man. His story is such a sad, weird story, right? Complicated guy, and at the same time, it's you look at him, and it's you see how he's looked at today, right? And especially after WrestleMania weekend,
that was very sad. And,
it's just it is what it is. He made a lot of bad decisions and did a lot of bad things, and it's the accumulation of it. Having known Teddy for about 20 years, it's you try to see the whole picture and this guy's journey, and at the same time, it started out so tragic, really, with his brother dying of a really horrible disease, and seeing your brother basically limb by limb get cut off because he has bacteria disease where it eats the flesh. And then he loses an uncle, then he loses another uncle, and just a really complicated life. And then he gets into wrestling really big, and he had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of amazing things because he had extraordinary talent. And of course, he had two dances with WWE. He had an opportunity with me, with you a few times, and I believe in second chances. I gave him a second chance.
And a third, and a fourth, and a fifth.
Yeah. And I think it's a guy that, there is a moment definitely where he has some remorse on things, but then whatever happens, he has the blinders on, and then more bad decisions follow. And it's just like, unfortunately, it's a series of these things repeating itself. And, it seems in the last year it's really escalated, and it's gotten even darker and more complex and crazy. And I don't know what to say other than that. Just, all
right. It's sad. I want to, before you start plugging where we can find you and where your shows are at, I just want to tell everybody, Court recommended to me this series called Gomorrah, which is about the mafia like in Naples, and it is fucking excellent. Highly recommend.
Not Naples, Florida. Naples, Italy. But yes, it is a great show. There'll probably be a spinoff in Naples, Florida. But yeah, that one is a great show on HBO Max. And you want to talk about a good pandemic binge. That show is fantastic. Really? And they have one more season going. And you watch it with subtitles. Trust me, don't watch it with the voiceover stuff.
Right.
That show is legit. If you like The Godfather, if you like Narcos, if you like The Sopranos, this thing has all that and then some great acting and stuff. And my favorite, maybe one of my all-time favorites. and some interesting hairstyles.
Right. We kept texting. What do you think of Mohawk? What do you think of this guy? What do you think's going to happen here? Really, really good shit. Yeah.
And to your point, though, it's like when you look at stuff that's going to influence you in your product. Right. I definitely, for the next cycle of MLW, when our new season kicks off, there's definitely some influence from the Gomorrah, because there's some incredible storylines, characters. Some of the women in the show are fascinating. How you can find levity and like intense characters in this one moment without blowing off their heat. I mean, they're masters of that. And that's the other thing the pandemic's allowed me to just watch other shit from other countries. I'm like, oh, man, I got to watch some more stuff from other countries. It blows away a lot of the stuff here in the States.
Right. The foreign shit is always better because they don't got CGI and all these special effects to lean back on. You got to give good stories and good acting.
Yeah. Very pure.
Okay, so where can people find you? Where can they watch your product? Boom, shoot your shot.
All right. You can get me on Twitter at Court Bauer. You can get MLW on Twitter at MLW, on Facebook at Major League Wrestling, on Instagram at Major League Wrestling, on YouTube at Major League Wrestling. All of our shows are available to binge and watch. Now more than ever, it's a good time to catch up on MLW because we're about to blow up on Vice. You can catch us on DAZN, Fubo Sports Network. We're in 20-plus countries and counting. And there's going to be some other stuff dropping soon, but the world of MLW never stops. We're the best-kept secret in the game. All the promoters copy our shit. They want our talent. Why? Because we're doing this shit right, and they don't want you to find out about it. So being on this thing, the promoters are watching us. You should watch us, too, because we're the real shit.
Yo, check him out. And when he says he's got some good shit coming up, you can take that to the Banco. My boy Nino Blanco. How'd you like that, Joe?
Going out strong.
Yo, thank you for being. I'll keep it at 100, Court. Boom.